Hey everyone, this is K. David of Shoe Fury. I'm here at the Mecca at Angelus to paint some 4th of July customs, and we're going to do some Jordans all flagged out. It's going to look really cool. Let's check it out. So this is the finished version, and this is obviously not done. So what we're going to do today is we're going to show you how to properly prep and paint the leather so it sticks and stays on for a really long time. You don't have to worry about it scuffing or coming off or anything like that. This is patent leather, so it's a little tricky. It can be tricky, but if you do it properly, it should stay on and you shouldn't have any issues with it. So the first step we did is obviously we took off the laces, and then we're gonna go and use the Angelus 1500 grit. This stuff is actually really good. It's really fine. So let's go ahead and get started. The one thing we got to remember is that this is patent leather, so like it's a little tricky, like we said. When we're sanding it, we want to be a little bit more careful than you would be with the regular leather, just because of how it's going to break down. And the other thing you want to make sure is like you want to be careful of the threads, because if you start sanding really hard, you're going to actually start to like de-thread it, and you're going to see like little hairs pop up, and that's something you don't want if you're paying attention to details. And so when we're sanding these, you want to make sure to get the crevices and everything in between, like the sole and the leather, and where the leather meets the other parts of the leather, the panels, because if you don't, it's going to really hurt you in the end, because you're not going to be able to paint on it as well. The paint won't stick as much. So you want to make sure you're really methodical, and it might take a little bit more time, but it's definitely going to be worth it in the end. So now that we're done sanding it down, the next step is obviously we're going to use the prepper and deglazer. This stuff's really good. And since we focused on the patent leather with the sanding, what we want to do is use the prepper and deglazer on the entire shoe. Make sure you get everything. And we just got to make sure we get into all these little crevices. Like we did the sanding, you want to be really thorough about this part especially, because if you don't, what's going to happen is the paint's going to start to peel back. So what you want to do is just make sure you properly deglaze all of it and just be thorough about it. And if you're not sure you got it, hit it again. Shoes are meant to be worn, so they're very durable, and so don't be afraid to go and do a second pass on it. So I already have my colors pre-mixed from the other shoe I did, but I'm gonna show you guys exactly how I did it, so that way you can have the same colors if you want. If you're not, you can play around with it and come up with your own color. Okay, so the first color we're gonna mix is the Collector's Edition True Blue, and we're gonna add a little bit of this into the tray. This is gonna be your base color blue. And then to darken it up a little bit, we're just gonna add a couple drops of black. You're not gonna get too crazy with the black, because when you add blacks to your colors, it can overtake it really fast. So we're just gonna go ahead and mix it. And so the next color we're gonna do is we're gonna use red, just plain red, and we're gonna do a touch of brown with it to give it like a rustic look, a little bit darker, but we're not using black because we don't want it to be too heavy and too dark. So the brown is a really good complement. And the same thing we did with the other color, you're just gonna drop in drops of the darker color until you get the shade desired. So now we're gonna mix white with a little bit of black. And remember, the first thing you wanna do is add the white and then literally a drop of black, because this will overtake the white very quickly. So now that we're ready to rock and roll with our colors, we got them all mixed how we like it. We're gonna go ahead and start with the blue first, because you saw the other shoe. We have the stars here. We stenciled these, so we want to do the blue first and let it dry as long as possible, because we're gonna put the vinyl stencil on top of that. And when you take the vinyl stencil off, there's a possibility that it could peel away some of the color of blue. So you wanna give it as much time as you can to allow that to dry. So we're gonna start with blue first. So when you're doing the first layer of colors, don't worry about it coming out too light or too streaky, because you're gonna always add more coats. You're gonna add like 2 or 3 coats to get it completely solid. And you gotta always remember too that it's gonna dry a little bit darker than what is in your palette. So now we're gonna do the top here, and we're gonna be painting very close to the liner. So if you're not comfortable doing it freehand like I'm gonna do it, just tape around the edges all the way down, and you should be good. But you still want to be careful, because you're going to end up getting streaks and it's still going to bleed through. And once the paint gets on the liner itself, it's going to be really hard to take out, almost impossible. You're going to end up having to cover it up. Hey everybody, welcome to the nerdery. So I have a pair of head magnifiers on, and that's just to help me get those little details. I love using them. You're going to see a lot more. You're going to be able to do a lot better work, cleaner lines, and you can do a lot less taping if you use a head magnifier, just so you can see everything up close. So now that we've done all the base coats for the blue, we're gonna go ahead and do all the detail work on the lip, these little details on the inside, and this is gonna level up your customs so they look really, really good, and people are gonna really appreciate it when they see them. Hey guys, so we just finished the blue, it's all done, and we're gonna move on to the stripes. And so what I did is I used vinyl and cut out my stripes that I want to use to block and paint over. And if you don't have vinyl cutter or anything like that, you can use just tape, and it's just as easy. For this project, we're going to use 1/4 inch width strips. So let's get started. So we just put the vinyl strips on here. We freestyled it. We just kind of eyeballed it and make sure they're symmetrical. They look good. They match the other shoe. And now we're going to go ahead and use the heat gun to heat set them. And what you want to do is make sure that it starts really bonding on there. You're going to start to be able to see the threads and the leather through the vinyl, and that's what you want. And then you know it's really on there, and very little paint should seep through when you're painting it. So now that we have the strips on there perfectly how we want them, we're gonna start with the red. And if you have a logo on here, like we do, we have our Jordan logo. What we wanna do is just make sure you paint around it and just be really careful, because you can always fix it, but it's gonna take you that much more time to fix it. So we did the stripes, and there was a little bit of bleed through. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and take plain white, and we're gonna do a couple layers, and it bled through because this is actually tumbled leather, not like I said before. I said patent leather. This is patent leather, this is patent leather. So this is actually tumbled leather, and it has little grooves in it, and the paint sinks into it, even though we had the stencils. But it's no big deal. These are happy accidents, like Bob Ross said, and we're gonna fix those really easy. So we did the red stripes, and now we're gonna do the gray stripes on this side and on this side, and this gray bar here on both sides to match the other shoe. So we just finished the gray stripes on both sides, and now we're gonna do basically a wash technique. You can kind of see it here. It's gonna be rough, and it doesn't need to be perfect. And we're also gonna do the toe box. So for this wash technique, we're gonna use the gray. So we're gonna use our mixture of gray, but we're also gonna use white. And we're gonna do a base white first. You're gonna have to work a little fast because you wanna add your gray into the base white before it dries. And so you want to work it in. If it's rough, it's no big deal. You want it to look rough. We're not going for a super smooth gradient. We want it to look a little bit weathered, a little bit worn. And so for the toe box technique, we're actually just going to use the gray straight right onto the leather. And all you need to do is start from the edge of the toe box and go up. Just go light, and just keep working it in. And if you have any spots that you don't like, you can always go over it with a little bit of white until it matches where you want it to match. And so we did all the grays, the sides, the panels here, with the toe box, and now we're gonna move on to Death by 1,000 Stars. And so for that process, I actually stenciled out my stars, but if you don't have a stencil maker, you can always do it by hand. Just be slow and methodical and you'll get through it. If not, you can use masking tape, draw on the stars, cut them out with an X-Acto knife, put it on the leather, paint right over it. Just take your time, be slow about it, and you'll get through it. Since the stars are white, and they're going on the blue background, what we're gonna do is start off with our mist first. We're gonna do a couple layers, put that on, make sure it's really covered, and then we'll add the white on top of the mist color. Because the white is so translucent, we wanna make sure it really pops. So that's why we're starting off with a mist. So we just finished the stars. We did a little bit of cleanup on them, and now we saved the best for last, the Jordan logo. And we're gonna use the zero spotter to do all those little tiny lines and detail work. So let's get started. So I'm very happy. We finished the Jordan logo, and now we're gonna do a dummy pass, which means we're gonna go through the entire shoe, and make sure we touch up any little spots that we missed or anything that we rubbed off paint. So on that note, make sure you have your colors here if you mixed your own colors, because last thing you want to do is remix colors and get the shades wrong. And after those little touch-ups, all we're going to do is put the finisher on and we're done. So we're going to finish it off with the matte finisher and add a drop of the duller to take away that sheen. We'll do on both shoes and we'll be done. So we just mixed our matte finisher with our drop of duller, and you're going to want to do at least 2 passes, but between each pass make sure you let it dry properly and then do the second pass and you'll be good. Hey everyone, so we just put on the finisher and we have these off-white laces that we laced it up with from Lace Lab, which came out really cool. And a big shout out to Angelus for having me here and making my dream come true. And again, my name is K. David of Shoe Fury. You can find me on Instagram and YouTube. Have a happy and safe 4th of July, everybody.